All right. Hold on. It's coming your way. If you hadn't subscribed, if you hadn't got a copy of this issue of the magazine, July issue, shame on you.
Okay.
All right, got you?
Yep.
Connecting with a few more here. Connected on Truth, connected on Crusade, connected on Blog Talk. And
the show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order. The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests. He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial. How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something. We both took the same vow, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Well, it's just a show. How can I contain the pain we hesitate? Knowing that you're right, blinded by the light. He is a free American, Clay Douglas. Blinded by the light. Catch the Free America weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about it, damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and drop the sun. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-998-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Special Edition on the 4th of July. And for you listeners out there that may have been born yesterday, that was the former President George Bush talking about the New World Order. One of the reasons I started this radio show, I started this magazine, and by the way, the July issue of the magazine is out. It's got articles in it we'll be talking about today with my guest, J.B. Campbell. And if you think that was just, that was yesterday, that was George Bush, that we've heard about that New World Order thing, well, maybe a modern-day president, maybe our current president, might straighten you out on this whole New World Order thing here.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
Well, I don't know, JB. Did he convince you to surrender all of your rights?
You need to play that again. I can't even believe what I just heard. I need to hear that again.
All right. Now this is edited. Somebody did take this out a little bit out of context, but these are his words. This is what he said, and the spin that they try to put on it is, well, he was just it was just misquoted. No, he said it. Listen.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
Now, that's what some people believe. Yeah, it's the way the elitists believe. It's the way the bankers believe. It's the way the Jews believe. You're just goyim. You're just cattle. You just, you know, you ain't smart enough. We control the money. You ain't smart enough to run to govern yourselves. This is what the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is about. This is what probably every war we've ever been involved in has been about in this century or this last century.
Well, I'd like to know the actual context of the actual words that he said, or what the entire talk was about, because even what he said was pretty earth-shaking, I must say.
You can catch my show about 2 days ago, and I did that. I covered that. Matter of fact, I'll find that for you, because we need to talk about it. This is the way they do it. You know, this is the way. I mean, this is the elitist thinking, and I'll pull that back up. I mean, it'll take me a minute to find it. How are you doing, anyway? Things getting better for you? I know that last time you were on my show, you had been blacklisted, kind of like I've been blacklisted in libraries and major corporations around the country. They don't want you to listen to the Free American. They certainly don't want you listening to Clay Douglas.
Yeah, well, it's war, you know, and they will wipe you out if you don't have the Goldman Sachs behind you. So we just have to suck it up, and we got to get tougher, though. See, we're just not tough enough yet mentally. We got to get a hell of a lot tougher. There's a new article out from the Council on Foreign Relations, excuse me, that discusses what's going on in the Middle East. We got this former ambassador, a couple of former ambassadors, and there's one guy named James Jeffrey. He was the ambassador to Iraq, and what he's saying now is this: with this crazy bunch of lunatics called ISIS or ISIL or IS, Islamic State guys, the cannibals, in other words, the ones that cut people's hearts out and eat them on video, that this ambassador, the man of peace, says you got to kill him. Well, this is how I feel about him and the Council on Foreign Relations, because these are the guys that gave us this catastrophe in the Middle East and in America. They gave us the catastrophe of World War I, even before they formalized their little group into the Council on Foreign Relations. These are the guys who brought us to the bloodbath of the 20th century and now the 21st century. And this guy has the gall to say you got to kill him. Well, who you have to kill
are the people who created this catastrophe, this humanitarian bloodbath.
And JB, all of these signs are, and of course this is written in stone, they plan to kill more people this century than they did the last century. And the last century was the bloodiest, most murderous century in the history of the earth. Now, we've got a video of the speech made in Belgium by the president, and it was edited and its meaning taken out of context. It says in the first part of the speech, the president says, leaders and dignitaries of the European Union, representatives of our NATO alliance, distinguished guests, we meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States and for the international order which we have worked for generations to build. Throughout human history, societies have grappled with fundamental questions of how to organize themselves, the proper relationship between the individual state and the best means to resolve the inevitable conflict between the states. In the second section of the speech, the president continues, and those ideas eventually inspired a band of colonists across an ocean, and they wrote them into the founding documents that still guide America today, including the simple truth that all men and women are created equal. But those ideals have been tested here in Europe and around the world. Those ideals have been threatened by an older, more traditional view of power. This alternative vision argues that ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs, that order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign. Often this alternative vision roots itself in the notion that by virtue of race or faith or ethnicity, some are inherently superior to others, and that individual identity must be defined by us versus them, or that national greatness must flow not by what people stand for, but what they are against. Now, I say that that's almost a perfect description of Israel today, of the Israelis today, of the Ashkenazi Jews, of their Talmud, of that doctrine of evil doctrine, to say that we're just cattle. So he is really describing the mindset of the Jew here, and again, he's got good speechwriters, so they did it. Now let you. Well, they had the video up, and now that's unavailable of the whole speech, but. I say he is describing perfectly the whole New World Order proposed by George Bush. And that is his mindset. And then we can move on from there.
He admitted that they had been working for decades, or whatever he said, to impose this new order on us.
That's right. We meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. There you go.
Right. That's the important part. Now he twists words there later by saying that others want to look at people as small-minded and whatever the
too small-minded to govern their own affairs. And
but
order
that's how they
progress.
feel about us. They're just twisting words to hide how they feel about us, and what their whole guiding principle is, that we're too small-minded and idiotic to handle our own affairs.
Well, I got to tell you, I've been really struggling with that for a while. Because, you know, I've talked over the years, I've told you that's the way the elitists feel like. They don't believe we're smart enough to control them, because look, we got all the money. We put this whole global financial deal together, and hey, we you know, in spite of your founding fathers' warnings, Thomas Jefferson, who this ought to be a day dedicated to Thomas Jefferson. He said, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land we conquered. In spite of his warnings, in spite of Andrew Jackson's stand against the banks, we took it, we accepted it, we let them slip it into us on Christmas. It was our Christmas present to the international bankers in 1913, wasn't it? So maybe
that's how they do things. They have to
maybe
do it that way.
Maybe that means they're right. We are too goddamn dumb to rule ourselves. And so, hey, we'll just let the bankers do it. We'll just let the politicians do it. And nobody sits and questions, how do you know which politician to vote for? Oh, that's right. The media owned by the banks, the news services like Reuters, bought by the Rothschilds in the 1800s, they'll tell us who to vote for. They'll tell us who we can trust. And if you're honest and you care about America and you are smart enough to understand we don't have to pay, our whole national debt is owed to the interest on money that was created out of thin air. If you're smart enough to know that, like my friend Charles Collins was, when he ran for president in 1996, every time Charles got up to speak, they turned the microphones off, they turned the cameras off, they pointed them at the ground. So nobody ever knew he was running. Maybe they are right. Maybe we are too goddamn dumb to take care of our own affairs. At least the majority of the people out there. And even Benjamin Franklin, another one of our founding fathers, warned us that democracy was two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. And as my European listener said, and the whole world falls for it.
Well, the problem is we don't understand Judaism. We don't understand how Jews work and how they operate. I mean, you look at, I was talking to a friend of mine up in Canada, a musician friend, talking about Lennon and McCartney, the Beatles writers. You know, they started out a great deal of talent, but got taken over by a Jewish agent, Brian Epstein, who turned it all over to a Jewish publisher in London named Dick James. His real name was Leon Isaac Wapnick, who turned it over to his New York Jewish partner, Charles Silver. And between the three Jews, they owned 75% of Lennon and McCartney's music. Lennon and McCartney never even heard of Charles Silver. They didn't know. They never had the pleasure of meeting their New York partner. This is what we're up against. Call it ignorance, naivete, whatever you call it. Our people are not used to this type of behavior, this criminal fraud that Jews specialize in. And so I guess we're easy prey for Jews who rise to the top of government. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the way things work is that psychopaths and sociopaths are drawn to government, whether it's being a cop or a president. It's this authority that they crave over other people. But nobody craves it to the extent the Jews crave it. And they must have it. They are insatiable in their cravings for power over people, including Jews. I mean, they got to have power over everyone. So we're not used to this. But we better get up to speed. We better realize what's happening and what these guys do when they have power over us. They kill us. They get millions of people killed. And they have to be stopped. On this biggest of all fake holidays in the world, the 4th of July, it's time to declare independence from Jews. They run the show.
You know, I got to tell you, I was looking for an agent in Hollywood, and a literary agent actually, and I got a hold of a guy and an attorney in out of Santa Monica, and I told him about the books I got. I told him about the radio show. I told him about the magazines that I'd published. He said, well, come out and talk to me. And I said, you've been to my website, you know who I am. Yeah, come on out and talk to me. Can't do anything unless you come talk to me. So I drove to Santa Monica and spent 45 minutes waiting on his front porch for him to wake up for our meeting. I got in to talk to him, and I brought a box of a bag of my books and everything I'd done, everything I'd written, all of some of my magazines. He didn't want to see it. Didn't want to see it. Said he had the reason he invited me out was because I'm a biker and I knew about the motorcycle industry, and HBO wanted a series, a reality series, or a series on bikers. And I said, well, how about a story about a Harley rider that's Lucifer? And his ears perked up, and he liked that. Must have been a Mason, I guess. And so I went back and put a short story that I'd written 45 years ago together as a screenplay. And I sent it to him. And he liked it, and HBO liked it. All I needed to do was sign that contract that he sent me. JB, the contract would have given him, now he never even looked at what I had done, what I had already written, what was already ready to sell. Never looked at it. But the contract would have given him 10% for being my manager, 10% for being my agent, 15% for being my lawyer, and he'd get 45% or 50% of the actual production of the series as the producer. In other words, he would have got about 95% of anything that we sold and anything that I had already done. And I wouldn't sign it. I wouldn't sign it. I told him to go to hell. I'm not signing that. But turns out he was Jewish. Now, this is the way that's what they did to the Beatles, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess they do it to all these guys, like Creedence Clearwater. I mean, they all had the same rotten Jewish experience. That's just the nature of the game. Entertainment. It's a Jewish racket. And it's for money, yeah, like you say. But it's also for mind control. They know that entertainment is the way to control minds, whether it's music or movies or literature.
Yeah, that's why Steven Seagal always fights the militia. You know, and it's why the cops are always the good guys. Miami Vice, you know. Look, the cops drive nice, neat cars, and they're the good guys.
You notice in movies or television, only cops and criminals and government agents are allowed to have guns. But civilians, normal people, men or women, never have guns, ever. Unless they're criminals. But the normal people, the regular people portrayed in these movies, never have a gun. I'm sure that's by the sheerest of coincidence.
Yeah, right. You sent me a link to an article. I think we might want to talk about that because it's on page 16 of the July issue of the Free American magazine. Just so happened I got this from you a few days ago, but I already had it laid in the magazine because it was pretty important. The article was, the U.S. Supreme Court is marching in lockstep with the police state, by John W. Whitehouse.
I did.
He said if the individual is no longer to be sovereign, if the police can pick him up whenever they do not like the cut of his jib, if they can seize and search him in their discretion, we enter a new regime. The decision to enter should be made only after a full debate by the people of this country, according to Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas. Whitehead said the U.S. Supreme Court was intended to be an institution established to intervene and protect the people against the government and its agents when they overstep their bounds. Yet, as I point out in my book, A Government of Wolves, the Emerging American Police State, Americans can no longer rely on the courts to mete out justice. In the police state being erected around us, the police and other government agents can probe, poke, pinch, taser, seize, search, strip, and generally manhandle anyone they see fit in almost any circumstance, all with the general blessing of the courts. Whether it's the police officers breaking through people's front doors and shooting them dead in their homes, or strip searching innocent motorists on the side of the road, these instances of abuse are continually validated by a judicial system that kowtows to virtually every police demand, no matter how unjust, no matter how in opposition to the Constitution. You know, and I've been telling people, if a man with a badge can come up and go, "What's that in your pocket? Is that marijuana I smell? Whoa, you're going to go to jail. You're going to do some time. You're going to work for IBM for 25 cents. You live in a police state." And here's John Whitehead confirming that.
But you know, it's always been this way since the very beginning, really. The myth that we were protected somehow by the Constitution has been our undoing. I mean, even before the Civil War, the Supreme Court, what Whitehead is referring to there, you know, as if the Supreme Court has recently broken down into a fascistic star chamber. It's always been this way. The Dred Scott decision, what was it, 1858 or 1857, somewhere around there, Dred Scott versus Sandiford, said that slaves had to be returned to their owners. And that wasn't anything to do with North and South. That was the United States. That was America. The Supreme Court of the United States said that slaves who broke away, who escaped, could be captured wherever in the country, but they had to be returned to their owners. because they were chattel property, and that's just the nature of contracts, and that's the way it is. So the Supreme Court has never been on the side of justice, freedom, and liberty and all that crap. The Constitution is our enemy. It always was. The Bill of Rights was added to protect us from the Constitution, but it couldn't do it. It couldn't live up to the job because the Supreme Court, in these contests between the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that's what Supreme Court decisions are usually about. Some conflict between the Constitution, the first 7 articles, and the Bill of Rights, the next 10 articles of amendment. There's generally some conflict. And the Supreme Court invariably finds on the side of the Constitution against the Bill of Rights. Sometimes, you know, there are exceptions to the rule, but that's the Supreme Court's job, because the Supreme Court was created by the Constitution, just like the President, just like the Senate and the House. That's where we don't understand what the hell we came from. We have to abandon this whole pretense. People believe in the Constitution the way they believe in the Bible, because they don't read it. They don't understand what's in there and what it created. It created a tyranny. The Bible created a tyranny, this fake make-believe super spook, the great Bolshevik in the sky. And the Constitution created a tyranny called the presidency, which we didn't really see. We didn't quite understand until 1861. Then it became pretty damn clear what we were up against. Up against a vicious, bloodthirsty, sadistic, merciless tyrant named Abraham Lincoln. Got 850,000 Americans killed for the Union. The Union? What the hell is that? A Union? This country wasn't supposedly set up for a union. It was set up for, supposedly, against an empire, against liberty. I mean, for liberty against an empire. But Patrick Henry looked at this Constitution. Somebody handed it to him after the convention in Philadelphia. He said, "What is this? What the hell is this? Well, this is what we fought for. This is another empire." People just couldn't see it, though, because they trusted these guys. They trusted them because of the revolution.
And, of course, you had the banker's man Hamilton in here. Aaron Burr ought to be, there ought to be statues up for him for shooting that bastard Hamilton.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't shoot him in 1787 when they were running a scam through Philadelphia. I say again and again and again, you can't have a central bank, a private central bank running the show without a central government to enforce it. This is the whole issue, and that's what Alexander Hamilton gave us. He gave us 2 horrible nightmare things. He gave us a central government with his Constitution. I mean, these are the Federalists. You know, you read the Federalist Papers. Hamilton and Madison and John Jay had all these arguments for a federal government. And we're taught this in school. Oh boy, the sacred federal government. They gave us the federal government, which we didn't want. We shouldn't have ever had. And then 2 years, it came into being in 1789, the same year the French Reign of Terror started by the sheerest of coincidence. Masons in America, Masons in France. Different kinds of tyrannies were started that same year, 1789. 1791, we got this central bank. Now, I mean, think of the irony, think of the unbelievable situation. The Constitution had one great clause in it, Article 1, Section 8, Clause number 4. The Congress shall mint the coinage and regulate the value thereof. Okay, well, that's some common sense at last. Debt-free currency, we got it. That was clause number 4. But clause number 1, 3 clauses up, said that the Congress shall borrow money. Borrow money? What are you talking about? Well, if you have the power to create money and regulate the value thereof, why do you borrow money and pay interest to some private businessmen? What the hell is that? There's the schizophrenia, the dichotomy built into this crazy document. But Hamilton, that wasn't good enough. Hamilton then empowered this bunch of his cronies who had made war loans to the rebels during the revolution over in Europe, these European cronies of his. He wanted them to get paid back with interest. Well, how do you do that if the Articles of Confederation don't give you the power to tax the people, to pay back your cronies? I mean, the 56 guys who signed the Declaration of Independence, and one of them was the richest guy in the colonies, I think his name was Carroll. But all 56 of those guys lost everything. They didn't get paid back with interest. They lost their shorts. They lost their homes, their estates, their families, their lives. They didn't get paid back, but...
Kind of what's happening to us today, isn't it? There's a whole new war going on against men like you and I, isn't it?
Yeah. Because we're not killing them yet. It's not going to be won until we start killing them. That's the only way to get out of this mess. There's no legal, procedural, constitutional, safe way to freedom. It's a dirty, bloody business. It always has been and it always will be. We just got to bite the bullet and start killing these guys. They've given us no chance. They've got our backs to the wall. They wipe me out. They wipe you out. Anybody who speaks up, if he's not mobbed up with a big outfit, he's going to get wiped out. So we got to get a big outfit. A big outfit. We got to get mobbed up and take these bastards on. And it's pretty damn simple. It's just kind of scary for most people. But it's simple. We got to bring down the federal government, the federal thing that was created by these creeps back in 1787 in Philadelphia. We got to abandon all that crap. Start over. They did. I mean, anybody can do it. We're not beholden to them anymore. That was their time. This is our time. This is our turn to make life better. But you can't do it adhering to old, rotten, corrupt rules imposed on you by deceivers, such as the Federalists. We got to start over. And what do? We got to overthrow this stinking federal government that has destroyed life on Earth as we know it.
We've actually got the ability to do that, and this is what they tried to do, what the South tried to do, that got them to come down on them. But the states, the states' rights was really what the Civil War was over. And I'm a big fan of states' rights. I don't think Texas ought to still be a republic. I don't think we should have ever gave up those Rocky Mountains. I don't like having to go to another state to see my mountains.
But you talk about states' rights. This is another fraud. Everything. I mean, the modern bad stuff happened in 1913 when Woodrow Wilson, he was elected in 1912, thanks to that stupid son of a bitch, Teddy Roosevelt, splitting the Republican vote. Not that Republicans are any damn better, but it gave us this radical named Woodrow Wilson, who was really the front man for the Rothschild Morgan interests, personified by Colonel Edward House.
Yep, the House.
In 1913, in Wilson's first year in power, we got as you pointed out, the Federal Reserve. That was at the end of the year, but before that we got the 16th Amendment, which was the bogus income tax. We got the 17th Amendment, which destroyed states' rights. There's no chance for states' rights anymore because of the 17th Amendment. The Constitution, such as it is purported to be, or presents itself as a contract between the states and the people. The people were represented in the House of Representatives, and those guys were elected directly by the people in elections. The states were represented in the Senate, and those guys, the senators, were appointed, not elected. They were appointed by the state legislatures to represent the interests of the states. But in Woodrow Wilson's first year, somehow, magically, we got another constitutional amendment, 2 amendments in 1 year, the 16th and the 17th amendments. The 17th arranged for the direct election of senators, so that not only the representatives, the congressmen were elected, now we got the senators being elected instead of appointed. Well, there go the states' rights, because there's no longer a contract between the states and the people as set up by the Constitution, and threw it out the window. It is null and void. The Constitution, even though I hate this damn thing with every fiber in my being, it was rendered null and void, technically, by the 17th Amendment. No more states' rights. So you can't, I mean, the whole thing is a fraud. But now we can see technically where the fraud occurred in 1913.
By the way, you mentioned Mandel House. On page 26 of this issue, this July issue of the Free American Magazine, third column, it said, America's vilest traitor, Edward Mandel House, is attributed with giving a very detailed outline of the New World Order plans that were to be implemented gradually over time to enslave the American people. A plan that's been repeated in Canada, Australia, Britain, and elsewhere. He stated in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property, that's you and your children, in a national system designed to keep track of the people that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such mythology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattels, our property, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the lawmaker under the scheme of secure transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bill of lading, the birth certificate, to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure out our plan. If by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund a government, by floating liens and debts to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations, and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will be unknowingly our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless, and without any hope for their redemption, we will employ the high office of the presidency of our dummy corporation, the USA, to foment this plot against America. And that's under the article on in this issue of the Free American, page 26, and called "The Origin of the Word Jew."
What year was that written?
That was Mandel House before Wilson, right as they were putting this whole banking thing into action. And I mean, the start of this article actually is pretty important, because it says many people suffer under the misapprehension that Jesus was a Jew. Moreover, that he was king of the Jews. Thus, by inference, that the Jews were the chosen people of the Bible, so ancient possessors and modern inheritors of the Bible covenants gifted by Yahweh to their forebears, Abraham, Jacob, and Judah. However, this was not the case. In fact, during Christ's mission and passion, no such people existed called Jews, nor indeed did the word Jew. In short, Jesus was not a Jew, nor was he king of the Jews. In fact, Jesus is referred to as a Jew for the first time in the New Testament in the 18th century. In the revised 18th century English editions of the 14th century First English translation of the New Testament, the word Jew is quite clear. The meaning of the word Jew is quite clear. Although Jew is a modern conception, its roots lie in the 3rd and 4th centuries A.D. That is, the modern English word Jew is the 18th century contraction and corruption of the 4th century Latin Judaeus, found in St. Jerome's Vulgate edition, and derived from the Greek word Iadias. An evolution of this can be easily seen in the extant manuscripts from the 4th century to the 18th century, which illustrates not only the origin of the word Jew found in the Latin word Judaeus, but also as its current use in the English language. Littered throughout these manuscripts are the many early English equivalents used by various chroniclers between the 4th and 18th century. Thus, from the Latin Judaeus to the English Jew to the evolution of this English forms is the evolution of the English equivalents for Jews, and it's got a lot of different until you get down to the 18th century, until they started using the word Jew. And Jonathan Williams, in his book Legions of Satan in 1781, said that Cornwallis revealed to Washington that a holy war will now begin on America, and when it's ended, America will be supposedly the citadel of freedom, but her millions will be unknowingly loyal subjects of the crown. Cornwallis went on to explain what would seem to be a contradiction. Your chronicles shall be used to teach your churches will be used to teach the Jews' religion, and in less than 200 years the whole nation will be working for divine world government, and that government they believe to be divine will be the British Empire. All religions will be permeated with Judaism without even being noticed by the masses. They will all be under the invisible, all-seeing eye of the grand architect of Freemasonry. And from the Canadian Intelligence Service, an excerpt from September 1952 by James Morehouse. The following speech was given by Rabbi Manuel Rabinovich before a special meeting of the Emergency Council of European Rabbis in Budapest, Germany in 1952. The goal for which we have striven so concertedly for 3,000 years is at last within our reach. Because its fulfillment is so apparent, it behooves us to increase our efforts and our caution tenfold. I can safely promise you that before 10 years have passed, our race will take its rightful place in the world, with every Jew a king and every Gentile a slave. We will openly reveal our identity with the races of Asia and Africa. I can state with assurance that the last generation of white children is now being born. Our control commissions will, in the interest of peace and wiping out our racial tensions, forbid the whites to mate with white women must cohabit with members of the dark races, the white men with black women, and thus the white race will disappear. For mixing the dark and white means the end of the white man. Our most dangerous enemy will become only a memory. We shall embark upon an era of 10,000 years of peace and plenty. The Pax Judicia. Our race will rule undisputed over the world. Our superior intelligence will easily enable us to retain mastery over a world of dark people. I mean, that's a pretty good description. There's a lot more in this issue of the Free American. I think this is probably one of the most important issues ever, because they're also talking about the dark races that are flooding up here on our borders. You sent me an article on that, and that's why our medical people are being threatened so they don't talk about the thousands of illegal aliens that are being shipped up here. All part of this plan to wipe us out, to reduce us to servants, to slaves. And
yeah, it's been going on for a while. You know, Alexander Hamilton was born down in southern Caribbean in the island of Nevis, just north of Venezuela. But you go down there to the island of Nevis, and you see the monuments to him. But it's well known on Nevis that was not his real name. He was adopted by a guy named Hamilton. His real father's name was Levy or Levine. So that's, I mean, the Jews came over here with Columbus. I mean, Columbus may have been a Jew for all we know, but the three ships sailed from Spain in 1492, the same year that Isabella and Ferdinand outlawed Judaism in Spain and called for their forced conversion to Catholicism. So a lot of them split, and some of them split with Columbus. I mean, they were here from the beginning, and which explains the sadistic, brutal treatment of the Native Americans by the forces of Columbus in the first trip and in the subsequent trips. This is the Jewish way, as we saw in 1917 when they took over Russia and created the Jewish paradise called the Soviet Union. They wiped out millions of Christians. How is this possible? How could a handful of Jews, literally a handful of Jews, wipe out millions of Christians in Russia? Well, I blame Christianity. I think this is the problem in America and in Europe and wherever this occurs. There's something about Christianity that protects the Jews. And I think that Christianity was created to protect Jews. There's something mysterious, there's something debilitating, weakening about this faith that makes people passive and resigned to their fate. Why? Well, what did Jesus do? Jesus didn't resist. Jesus supposedly was, I mean, it was forewritten, it was preordained that he would appear, be accused, and then be tortured to death. And this is supposed to be perfection. Well, man, if that's the role model that Christians aspire to, what the hell? There's no way to win if this is considered perfection. Surrender?
Well,
I mean, Jesus had no program for victory, did he? Was there any program for victory, either from Jesus or from Saul of Tarsus, the great architect of the New Testament?
You mean the guy that said, "Be a good slave, don't rebel against your masters"? The Pharisee that Jesus railed against, the Pharisee that Jesus ran out of the temple. I mean, he did do some right things. Jesus, I said he might have solved the problem we got today. How do you fight evil without becoming evil? You know, I don't want to see us descend in the same depths of depravity that the Jews typify. But again, how do we solve this? I mean, you know, I understand your stance here. You know, they want to kill us, so, you know, we certainly got the right to defend ourselves here. But how do we put this together? I mean, the American people, nobody has, since my so-called accident 10 years ago, May 20th, it was my 10th anniversary of their attempt to kill me. Nobody has stepped forward to help. Nobody. Matter of fact, I've had this magazine up, which is really, really powerful. It talks about the UN, how they're going to use these children that they're shipping up by planes, by trains, by buses. They're putting these illegals on buses and planes and sending them up here. This is and they're filled with lice. They're filled with cooties, whatever. You know, they've got diseases, measles, and in that article you sent me, they are threatening the medical staff. Keep your mouths shut about the illegal immigrants or face arrest. Shades of Sandy Hook. I mean, you got the sheriff department saying, don't listen to anybody else, just listen to what the sheriff is telling you about Sandy Hook, or you could be arrested.
We've got San Antonio. The reporters are being threatened with prison for telling the truth about what's going on at Lackland Air Force Base with these illegals, as you mentioned.
That's right.
They say 96,000 of these kids from Central America, not Mexico, of course, but from countries below Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. Some of these people don't even understand Spanish. They use some Mayan dialect that nobody understands. Nobody can communicate with these diseased kids, and they're being put into these FEMA camps and then shipped, as you say, into the interior of America. I mean, the Mexican government obviously put them on trains to transport them 1,000 miles across Mexico up into Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. What the hell? This is treason. This is literally treason by the American government in league with the Mexican government to wipe us out. Because the Border Patrol agents are themselves coming down with TB, scabies, and other horrible diseases from these aliens. Well, this is something that cannot be dealt with legally. There's no way. I mean, you're going to go to the Attorney General, to Eric Holder, and ask him for relief? He's doing it to us. He's the one doing it to us. He's the one that gave thousands of military-grade weapons to the Mexican drug cartels to kill as many Mexicans as possible, to discredit our gun ownership in this country. I mean, it was a total flop, but it got hundreds, maybe thousands of people killed. That's what we're up against. That's the psychopathy that we're up against. There's no legal way to deal with this when the Attorney General and the President are in charge of these incredible schemes to wipe us out. There's no way, man. You gotta deal with this on their terms, which is violence. They're using violence and the threats of violence against us to destroy us. We have to fight back. I mean, this is the 4th of July, the biggest fake holiday in America. Why? Well, the first Bank of the United States, created by Alexander Hamilton, as I mentioned a little while ago, was actually a private organization owned by the private Bank of England. We supposedly fought a revolution against England, and yet our money supply was controlled by the Bank of England for the first 20 years of our existence as the United States of America. They got a second charter called the Second Bank of the U.S. after the War of 1812. See, by 1811, when the 20-year charter ran out of the first bank of the United States, well, the Congress was thinking, Jesus, criminy, we're paying interest to this bunch of private businessmen for our own currency? So they kind of dragged their feet on giving them a second charter, another 20 years. So what happened? Well, the English army, the British army, attacked us, burned down the White House and the Congress and the library. In one fell swoop, they invaded Washington, D.C.
And made that 13th Amendment disappear, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, so we were under this private British system even though we thought we were independent. I mean, the whole thing's a scam. There's no way to deal with this stuff legally. They've taken away the law. They run the law for their own benefit.
All right. Hang on. We got a short break here. We'll be right back with J.B. Campbell.
Discover what's really going on in the news that mainstream media won't tell you. Are you frustrated with your elected politicians? Get the news behind the news at truthradio.com. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs on demand. Listen when you want to. truthradio.com. The truth is out there. All you have to do.
Yeah, if I were out watching news, I would know better than to think that my listeners would be interested in a DVD having to do with history. You are different, though. I think you would really benefit by watching a DVD of a video I've had in my library for a long time. It's called the Mena Cover-Up. Mena, Arkansas. Yes, Mena, Arkansas. That's the place where George Bush the first and Bill Clinton first did business together. It's all told in a book by Terry Reid. And the book's name is Compromise. But this video is something else. This is where you see the pictures and the real interviews and the whole story about how drugs brought Bill Clinton to the presidency. Right for the Mena Cover-Up DVD, when you write Truth Radio, P.O. Box 344, Nipomo, California, zip code 93444. That's P.O. Box 344, Nipomo 93444.
Centuries numbered 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 10 times 10 times 10.
All right. Just warming up the coffee here. My guest today is J.B. Campbell, and we're talking about the whole fraud, I guess. It's the 4th of July fraud here. It's in that War of 1812, you know, it's that was to eliminate the real 13th Amendment that barred titles of nobility from running for office, for holding office in the United States. And that's exactly what's happened. All these royalty, all these esquires, all these lawyers with their office probably right next door to the Bank of England over in the city of London, one of the control centers along with the Vatican. And the common law juries in Brussels have found the Queen and the Pope guilty of genocide. I mean, they ain't no statute of limitations on genocide, I don't think. So, you know, we got millions of Native Americans that were murdered by these murderous bastards. Like Columbus. Columbus killed a lot of them himself. It's Now, I've got a meeting on the 12th of July here, up in, I believe, in Waco, about the, what's going on here. Hang on a minute. I got a caller in. It's my friend Dr. Jake Wade. Let me see what he's got to say. Hello, Dr. Wade. How are you, Jake?
I've actually been better. I've been in a wheelchair for 4 days, but I called to try to catch you. Are you on your show?
Yes, sir. I'm on here. J.B. Campbell's on with me. Say hello to J.B.
Hello, JB. God bless. I don't want to take any time, but Rudy Sanchez is in the hospital, in the heart hospital. Went in early this morning. His arteries are plugged up, and he's got the same problem he had 5 years ago. So I need to get prayer, and I thought maybe you'd put it out there so we can get a bunch of people praying for him.
Well, you've got the floor here. This is being recorded. This is being put up on 3 networks. Rudy is a good friend and a supporter, so yes, give out as much information as you can. Anything I can do to help, I certainly will.
Well, you being the voice is a big help, because, you know, in the book of Acts, Peter was thrown in jail in a very bad prison, and the church prayed for him until the angel came and got him out, and that's what I'm trying to do for Rudy now.
Well, I would encourage all of my listeners to do that. Rudy Sanchez is in Austin. Where's, what hospital is he in, Jake?
The Heart Hospital in South Austin, I think.
Okay.
But he's quite a Bible scholar and a very devoted member of our little group, as are you, and just, you know, I don't want to lose any of you.
Well, I appreciate that, and you might let people know, especially Randall, that the July issue of the Free American is out. Probably one of the more powerful issues that I've ever put out. A lot of great information in it, and probably the best tool we've got to counteract, well, the whole propaganda system we find ourselves in. But
could you send me a copy of that? I have 4 history students right now, and I would love. I'm doing Desi's Constitution CD she put out, which is excellent. It's just mostly Constitution, and if I could throw that with it, maybe we could get some people.
I will be happy to do that. Give me your email again.
It's drdajw at timothybiblecollege.org. DRDAJW. DRDAJW at timothybiblecollege.org.
Okay.
And I don't want to take your guest time. I'm sure he is probably in our camp and helping the fight, so I'll leave it to y'all, but I appreciate you giving me a couple of minutes.
All right, sir. Thank you anytime, Jake, and love to have you back on whenever you feel up to it.
Let me heal a little bit, maybe next week.
All right, sir.
God bless. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. All right. All right. J.B. Campbell is my guest, and how do you feel about that, J.B.? I mean, you know, Dr. Jake Wade, I've known him for years. He has come up with an alternative to our whole public fool system, Timothy Bible College and the Little Red Schoolhouse. He's a little bit more up. I mean, he's certainly a biblical scholar, and you know, we still have our doubts and differences. And one of those, I'd like to talk about that because I want your input on this. He called me up the other day, and he was a little upset with me because I had put some information up on the up on my website called I put a video up about almost a 2-hour video, hour and a half video, called The Greatest Story Never Told. And I put it right beside I put a book right beside it, English version of Mein Kampf, and the article or the video that I put up, The Greatest Story Never Told, was about Hitler. And Jake got a little bit upset about that. He can't support me if I'm supporting Hitler. And I said, this is not a matter of supporting Hitler, not supporting the Nazis. This is a matter of trying to get the history out, both sides of the story. And the promo on this film, which is available on freeamerican.com, says the mid-20th century, the world has only ever heard one side of an incredible story, the story of a boy from an ordinary family whose ambition was to become an artist, but who instead became a drifter. His destiny, however, was not to drift into waiting oblivion, but to rise to the greatest heights of power, eventually to become one of the most influential men who ever lived. Now, for the first time, here's a documented account of the story many to believe the greatest story never told. And right below that, I got a quote from John F. Kennedy, who said Hitler will emerge from the hatred that surrounds him as one of the most significant figures who ever lived. He had a mystery about him in the way he lived and in the manner of his death that will live and grow after him. He had the stuff of which legends are made. And, by the way, his book, Mein Kampf, has now become the most popular book for the Kindle, replacing the Protocols as the best-selling anti-Semitic classic. What about it, JB? I mean, I do believe Hitler was loved. When you see this film, I mean, he was really loved by the Germans. And it was the Jews that declared war on the Germans, not just Hitler, but the Germans, before the World War ever started. They started the World War. Am I right about that?
Yeah, definitely. It was enunciated. The declaration of war by Judaism was enunciated 1933, I think in August, by a New York criminal attorney named Samuel Untermeyer. This is an amazing character. This is, 1933, but back in 1917, the English, actually 1916, the year before, the English were getting ready to surrender, to declare peace, or sue for peace, as they say, in World War I. Things were so horrible, the trench system of warfare, no man's land, poison gas, machine guns, artillery, the horrible, rotten, filthy conditions of the trenches. My uncle was in the trenches. It destroyed his mind. That was a year later, 1917 and 1918. But the trench system was so horrible, it killed so many, hundreds of thousands of English boys and German boys and French boys, that the English had had enough. They were getting ready to say, okay, let's forget it. Go back to the status quo ante. But a Jewish scientist named Chaim Weizmann approached the British Prime Minister and said, hey, wait a minute, don't be talking about peace. Don't be talking about an end of hostilities. You can still win this war. And the Prime Minister said, what do you mean? Well, I mean, what if the Americans should come in on the English side? Well, yes, but how would that happen? Well, it could happen. Really.
Yeah, all you got to do is give us Palestine and we'll bring them in.
He said, all I would need would be a letter, say, from you or from the British government. Okay, okay, what letter? Well, I would need a letter saying that the British government looks with favor on the idea of Palestine becoming a home for the Jews. And the British Prime Minister said, well, I mean, we have nothing to do with Palestine. That's the Ottoman Empire. The Turks are in charge of Palestine. Well, yes, now, but, you know, it could happen. British could be in charge of Palestine. And if you were, then I would just like a letter saying that you view favorably Palestine as a homeland for Jews and Arabs, you know, 50-50, right down the middle. The British Prime Minister must have been thinking, well, what's the worst that can happen, you know? So he had the Foreign Minister, Balfour, write a little letter to who? To Lord Rothschild, of all people. Lord Rothschild wasn't in the government. Hein Weizmann wanted a letter to Lord Rothschild saying that this would be the case, if, you know, theoretically. That's the Balfour Declaration. So, okay, cut to America. Hein Weizmann's colleagues, his Jewish colleagues in America, namely Samuel Untermeyer, the criminal attorney, Bernard Baruch, the new Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, and then Felix Frankfurter, another future Supreme Court Justice. These four Jews approached Woodrow Wilson as Untermeyer had approached him a little earlier with some letters from his girlfriend, his mistress, saying that back in a couple of years earlier, Untermeyer said, hey, I represent this woman. I've got her letters. She needs support from you. And Wilson said, oh, I can't do that. I'm the president. Well, okay, so that's fine. I'll support her. I just need, in return, I need to be able to have a say in the next appointment of a Supreme Court justice. And that's how America got Louis Brandeis as a judge, a Supreme Court judge. So, cut to 1917, they used the same letters. Untermeyer, Baruch, Brandeis, and Frankfurter said, now you need to be going to war on the English side. He said, well, I can't. I ran as a peace candidate and re-ran, you know, in the re-election as a peace candidate. Well, it's time to change that. We're going to go to war against Germany on the English side. And that's how we got into the war. So it's Samuel Untermeyer. But so cut back forward to 1933, the same guy, Samuel Untermeyer, declared war, economic warfare by the Jews against Germany. Why? They said, you either get rid of Hitler or we will have a real war. Why? Because by that point, Hitler had started using debt-free currency. Because England and America had stolen all of Germany's gold under the Versailles Treaty. They had nothing. They were starving. So Hitler issued the debt-free Reichsmark after issuing scrip in some basic industries that was so successful. They said, well, let's just issue the Reichsmark based on the productivity of the German people. That's what led to the great German economic miracle, which was the greatest crime against Judaism imaginable. That was the real reason that German cities were turned into smoking rubble, as an object lesson, never to do this again. So, yeah, Hitler
for instance.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing that Samuel Untermeyer did, he and Bernard Baruch financed the Schofield Bible. Cyrus Schofield was this con man and felon, but he was told by Untermeyer and Baruch to create this new version of a Bible, the Schofield Bible, which fraudulently justified the Jewish takeover of the Middle East, Zionism, in other words. This is where it came from. This is why the Christians of America, the fundamentalists especially, but virtually all Christians in America support Israel. Why? Because of the Schofield Bible, which again was financed and facilitated by this New York criminal attorney, Samuel Untermeyer, and Bernard Baruch. I mean, it's just a tiny number of people can change the whole course of a nation's conduct. So we have to, I think, you know, your friend is a Christian, a very serious Christian, but the Christians really have to examine themselves and examine their belief system.
Let me clarify that. He refers to the churches with the Masonic cornerstone there. He refers to them as religiosity, religionist, and he's not a big fan of them. He's not a big fan of them. So,
but he buys into the Jewish hatred of Hitler, and he criticizes you for giving a balanced look at what happened in Germany. I mean, yeah, the Germans loved Hitler. Why? Because they were starving to death in 1933. They'd been through the real starvation of the 1920s because of America, because of England, because of Jewish banking, the Rothschild Syndicate, and Hitler delivered them from this with his debt-free currency. They went from starvation and 50% unemployment to paid holiday cruises within a couple of years, and by people being able to buy cars and homes. Yeah, it was a German economic miracle. He should have gotten the Nobel Prize, you know, big joke. But if Obama could get it for being a warmonger, Hitler should have got it for being a peacemonger and a deliverer of the German people from Jewish depravity. Yeah,
I agree with that. And you know, I'm not sure that the whole Nazi thing, I'm not sure exactly where that came from. Unless it was the Ashkenazis that were running the whole Zionist movement.
Well, you know, we got the whole scam of the Jewish identity, the Jewish law of return, the idea of Israel or Zion. It came out of Russia. This was a creation of the Russian Jews, the same people who had created communism. The same people, virtually, I mean, their brothers created Zionism at the same time, in the same place, in Russia. They had this pipe dream of them being the people of the book, which of course they weren't. They were, their ancestors were converts to Judaism.
And by the way, that's been documented by the Jews themselves, by their own scientists, that they came from Khazaria, not Palestine.
Yeah, so they created this idea of world revolution. The communists wanted the revolution to be centered in Moscow. The Zionists wanted the revolution to be centered in Jerusalem, or Palestine. That was their only disagreement, and it was a pretty serious disagreement. But these Zionists, they dreamed of somehow taking over Palestine. Well, this seemed like a pipe dream. How in the hell could a bunch of impoverished converts to Judaism take over Palestine? Well, we found out because of Chaim Weizmann, the Balfour Declaration, because the Turks, the guys who were in charge of Palestine, the Ottoman Empire, they were allied with the Germans in World War I. And when the Germans and their allies lost the war, well, we had this new thing called the League of Nations. The League of Nations mandated the British, lo and behold, to be in charge of Palestine. So the British Army was now the protector of Jews pouring into Palestine, and these unfortunate British soldiers had to protect Jews from the angry Arabs who said, what the hell did we do to deserve this? Well, who are these people? Who are these aliens pouring into our country? They're not even Jews. They're Russians. What the hell? They have no blood ties to this region. They're pretenders. They're fakers. But that was the nature of the Balfour Declaration.
Let me ask you about this. What is currently happening right now over there with in the Ukraine? Now, the Jews, as Soviet Union, starved 11 million Ukrainians to death, at least. And today, we've got Russia, Crimea pulling away from the Ukraine. But isn't the Ukraine right there on the Black Sea where Khazaria was? And aren't the Jews now trying to move back in to the where Khazaria, their once great country of Khazaria was? Now they call it the Ukraine. Is that accurate?
Well, Khazaria was up there between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. I mean, these people are Caucasians, literally Caucasians. And they eventually, they converted to Judaism. They were ordered to convert to Judaism around 800 AD by their king. And that was told in the 13th tribe by Kessler, and has recently been echoed or ripped off by Shlomo Sand in Israel, the guy who wrote the book called The Invention of the Jewish People, and has further been ripped off by a social scientist or some PhD guy in Israel who has confirmed that the Jews are Khazarians. But by 1200, they had been fighting with the Golden Horde, the Genghis Khan outfit, and finally, they were pretty tough people, but finally the Golden Horde ran them out of Khazaria up north into Russia. The Russians didn't know what to do with them, so they put them in the area you mentioned, Ukraine, the Pale of Settlement. And they said, you got to stay in here. You can be here, but you got to stay inside this area, the Pale of Settlement. Some of them escaped, but most of them stayed. And this is where they plotted the takeover of Russia. For hundreds of years, they plotted this. And they were a bunch of troublemakers from the very get-go. And by 1905, boy, they were plotting revolution against the Russian Tsar. And by 1917, of course, they were successful with the Bolshevik Revolution. But that was aided and abetted by America, by Woodrow Wilson, Colonel House, and the Lansing and the Dulles brothers, and the future Council on Foreign Relations. Trotsky and his 350 Menshevik Jews were living in New York. Trotsky was in New York with his 350 Mensheviks. Menshevik means minority. It's a crazy thing because Bolshevik means majority. But Lenin's Bolsheviks, they were all in Zurich, Switzerland. There are 150 of them. Now, a week after America and Germany were at war, 1917, Woodrow Wilson and Colonel House put Trotsky and his Menshevik Jews on a boat and sent them to St. Petersburg or Petrograd. At this very same time, the German army put Lenin and his 150 Bolsheviks on a train to meet up with Trotsky in St. Petersburg and thereby take over the new Russian democracy, headed up by another Jew named Kerensky. They'd overthrown the Tsar and the royal family, taken over, and they started the Duma, the parliament. First time in Russian history they had a democratic thing going. But the Americans and the Germans, even though they were at war, they collaborated, sent these two Jewish communist factions to St. Petersburg where they plotted and they took over the new Russian democracy. The upshot of that was that Russia declared a separate peace with Germany, and allowed all those German soldiers on the Eastern Front fighting against the Russians to give up and to go west and meet the incoming Americans. I mean, this is the textbook example of treason. There are very few of them. But Woodrow Wilson committed actual treason by freeing up the German soldiers on the Eastern Front and allowing them to meet and fight the American and Canadians and French and English soldiers on the Western Front. It's unbelievable, but this is what happened. This is what we're up against: treason and treachery and betrayal, skullduggery on a scale we can't even imagine. How many people
What do you think? What do you think? I think they have killed more Americans, especially if you include the abortions that have been going on, than they did in Russia. I mean, we're just not seeing it because, oh, he had a heart attack, oh, they had cancer, you know, and all they're doing, this medical association, is just milking all of the money out of their families if they get sick. We can cure cancer, hemp can cure cancer, cannabis can cure cancer, but oh, it's illegal to have that. What is it going to look like in future history when they look about this time period that we're in right now? I got a feeling that you and I will be looked at a lot differently than the Jewish-controlled press, because the Jewish-controlled press demonize you and I the same way they demonize Hitler, the same way they want to demonize Lucifer. I don't think Lucifer is the same thing as a devil at all. I think in a book I wrote 45 years ago, JB, I said, whole Jewish God, he was one bloodthirsty sucker, man. If there was a Lucifer, if there was a Satan, it'd have to be the Jewish God Yahweh. But I was just writing science fiction 45 years ago.
Well, I agree with you, and Christians don't like to delve too deeply into the Old Testament. It's pretty disturbing stuff.
Why would a Christian God, a loving God, not want Adam and Eve to know the difference between good and evil?
Yeah, why would he condemn women to painful childbirth and us to get our food from the ground, supposedly, because of a knowledge of the difference between good and evil? It's just a mind-numbing concept. It's full of hatred for humanity. And here's this God, this so-called Yahweh, who so hated life on earth that he wiped it all out, except for old Noah and his zoo. What the hell is that? This is a loving God? I mean, come on. The whole thing is psychopathic, and it's guaranteed to rot your brain. There's nothing in it of value that we can use to win against evil. There's no program for victory in the Old Testament or the New Testament over evil. So let's abandon the whole thing. Let's start over with the Constitution. We got to get rid of that. Let's stop reading this darn Bible, because it just messes our minds up. It's designed to do that. It's designed to do that. There's no sense to it. Faith? Come on. You can't test it. You have to have faith. Well, that's what the con men say. That's how the con gets so successful, because it depends on faith and confidence. Well, I'm sorry. I can't go with it. I'm not a believer. I have to have some facts. I trust facts, but not belief systems.
The Bible has been used as a rallying point, and not always a good one, you know. I mean, I don't see anything Christian about the treatment of the Indians. I think we should have adopted their lifestyle. They lived in harmony with the planet and the animals, and had the proper amount of reverence and respect for the animals they killed for food. And of course, we've got the Constitution now. That's a rallying point of the Patriot movement. But oh, by the way, are you aware that Alex Jones has come out and admitted that he is Jewish?
I saw that. I know he's, married to a Jewish gal. His children are technically eligible under the law of return to become Israeli citizens and so forth. I suspect his exclamation that I'm a Jew, well, that may be an emotional thing. I don't know if he's supposedly Welsh. Jones is a Welsh name, so I don't know anything about his background. But he has Jewish attorneys, Jewish bankers, Jewish supporters. I think virtually all of his sponsors are Jewish firms. So he's stuck. He's trapped in the Jewish system, and he can't criticize Jews. He can't criticize Israel very seriously. He pays lip service a little bit sometimes because they're so outrageous, but he's stuck. What can he do?
Clay, you could just do so much better, Clay, if you just didn't talk about the Jews. If I didn't talk about the Jews, this wouldn't be an honest show. This wouldn't be the truth. And I don't believe that the old woman who lives over in that corner house there, who had sons that became doctors and lawyers, I don't believe she's part of the New World Order plan. I don't think she's automatically evil. And I tell people, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. I care about what you're doing today. The lawyers and doctors, I got a problem with. And it doesn't really matter whether they're Jewish or not. It's simply that they are trying to kill us, not save us.
Yeah, exactly. By their fruits you shall know them. I mean, that's what we're saying here. Doesn't matter who they are, it's what they do.
Careful, JB. I think you're quoting from the Bible now.
I just made a prayer. Excuse me. Hallelujah.
It's kind of one of this is a serious subject matter, and maybe you think I shouldn't be laughing, but you got to really learn to enjoy the battle. We are in a war, and we ought to be sitting around the campfire every night before we go out on our raids or go out for an engagements, and laugh and enjoy ourselves and appreciate each other. And this issue of the Free American, I mean, we talk about there's so many articles in there by so many different people that all come to pretty much the same conclusion. This whole New World Order is a Jewish plot and been there for 3,000 years, just like they said. They admit it. I publish what they have said, what the Jews have said, what the Zionists have said, and I'm sorry, you want to get nitpicky? Well, you should call them Zionists. You shouldn't call them Jews. Well, they call themselves Jews. So if they don't want me using that term, hang a sign up that says Edomite in residence or something, Otherwise, I'll use the term anyway I damn well please. But this issue of the Free American is really, it's really powerful. Talks about the UN, talks about the illegal aliens, talks about the origins of the whole word Jew, and that's the only point of agreement I got with them. I think sometimes by using the term Jew, it gives them too much power, it gives them too much status, and they don't deserve it.
I agree with that. I'm reluctant to talk about Jews much anymore for that very reason. I don't like to empower them. But I mean, it's a two-edged sword. You gotta be able to examine and talk about the truth, and you gotta be careful not to create a boogeyman and fear and paralysis. That's what Alex Jones does. His listeners must be pretty much scared to death because he offers no solution You know, I hate analysis myself. I've been doing this since 1968, saying virtually the same thing. I'm a one-note Charlie, say the same thing over and over and over. And I hate analysis. You have to give a solution. I use analysis enough to give me an excuse to make a suggestion, to give a proposal. That's our duty. You can't just scare people. You've got to offer a solution. And the solution in this case is pretty unpleasant, but there's no other way that I can see. There's no other way to deal with evil.
Hang on here. I got dropped Truth Radio. Let me get that back here. I'm sorry about that. I did check my email, and I don't know why Truth Radio keeps dropping. I've lost it 2 or 3 times. All right. We're bringing Truth Radio back up. My apologies, guys. I did check my email. Thank you, Richard. And I don't know why Truth Radio is dropping, but Crusade ain't, JB ain't, Blog Talk ain't, only Truth Radio disconnects. And that may be because Truth Radio is my conduit to TalkStream Live. So, sorry about that if you're listening on Truth Radio. I appreciate somebody sending me an email. What time did that email come in? That was 10:10, so we've been down on that about 20 minutes. My apologies, guys. Apologies, but it's just the way they do things, doesn't it? They do have access to Skype. Fusion centers have access. So my apologies. Anyway, my guest is J.B. Campbell, and that's what I want to talk about. That, you know, I came up with several things about the same time. I came up with Building Number 7 on the cover back in 2004, referred to it on the air as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. And I also came out with the film True Face of FEMA, which is still a great showcase for their plans for the American people. We'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people. Case of a single outbreak of smallpox, because what? Some of them won't line up on the Kmart parking lot to get to get a vaccination for that'll give them a disease that's been eradicated in this country for 100 years. Yeah, some of us won't. But I also came up with the whole concept of Liberty Villages, and I said if you grow your own food and you generate your own power, you cut all these electric lines out, you put a magnetic generator in your garage, solar on your roof, and a windmill up there, then you don't need the banksters or the government for much. You don't need them for anything then. And I thought that might be the reason they tried to kill me, because they have, since then, they have gone back and they've attacked anybody that set up a backyard garden or a front yard garden. They've attacked people right up there in Arlington. They were doing something called the Garden of Eden. They were growing their own food and feeding people in their community. And suddenly they're on the target list. Suddenly it's not just militia guys, it's preppers that they're going after now. And to me, really, that's the only answer. The gentleman I had on, I believe, day before yesterday, is setting up these common law grand juries. We got some people, common law grand jury that was set up in Nebraska, helped get an elderly couple out of jail and got them to got their 10,000 acre farm back that they had tried to confiscate. So, is that the answer for us all to go back to the... and I said Liberty Villages existed in this country for hundreds of years. Everywhere you traveled across this country, you'd come up on a farm or a ranch with a windmill. With a windmill there. And sitting out in the middle of nowhere, growing its own food, growing their own food, raising their cattle, raising their sheep. And the villages, the towns that grew up around them, I mean, the town grew up in the middle of all these farms and ranches. Is that what we need to get back to? Is that our only answer other than... because we can't organize... If you and I go up against these people by force of arms, they'll just kill us. They outgun us, they outnumber us, so they can just kill us. If we don't have the protection of numbers, there's not much, we don't have much of a chance. And trying to organize the patriots to back us and to support us and to come up with any kind of solution is like herding cats. They don't want to do it. They don't want to follow leaders. Oh, well, Clay wants to legalize marijuana. Well, we can't be listening to him. You can't be listening to him. Colorado did. They listened to me. They legalized it, and they're putting $50 million a year back into their pockets. What about it, JB? What's our answer here? How do we get... I can't even get people to buy a damn magazine for $2.99. I used to sell 10,000 of them in the bookstores for $5. Now they're $2.99, and I'm lucky if I get one or two a day buying it.
Well, I think the answer is we got to think big. I know you're thinking big, but we got to think big in terms of how do we fix this thing. The federal government has got to be recognized, and it is generally. It's feared by the people. It's feared. It's hated by the people. We have to create understanding about the overthrow of the federal government, the destruction of it as our natural enemy. It is the enemy of mankind, but it's definitely the enemy of Americans. It's never done anything for us. That's got to be recognized. I mean, some people might think, well, it's given me welfare, it's given me food stamps, and okay, there is that segment of America that wants to continue this theft program. But is it really theft? I mean, it's really run by the Federal Reserve System. It's not exactly taxes. Taxes are a scam, too. It's all done by the creation of this funny money by the Federal Reserve. Their incentive to do this is that they get interest. They don't expect ever to get paid back because they didn't create anything. They created this fake money system out of nothing. But the real part of it is the interest that they get. So the Federal Reserve, among three Jewish organizations, three private Jewish organizations that run the federal government, are the Federal Reserve System, AIPAC, and the Council on Foreign Relations. Now we have to get the military, and by that I mean the loyal segment of the military, which I estimate about 60%, based on that infamous questionnaire from 1994.
Hello,
Will you fire?
my name is Richard Gray, and in this short presentation, I'm going to tell you the strange but true story of how one...
Sorry about that.
So we got to get the veterans as many of veterans as possible, because they're at the top of the list of the bad guys for destruction. We see how determined the Jewish American government is to kill the veterans by the way the Veterans Administration is treating them with secret death panels. I mean, who knows really how many people are on these lists of people who will never see a doctor? These secret lists. Well, that right there is enough for veterans to go to war against the federal government. But it's not just the federal government, it's the 3 Jewish organizations that run the federal government. These are the ones that have to be taken down. We got a plan. I got a plan. It's a simple plan. It's dangerous, but life in America is getting pretty damn dangerous. Especially if you're a veteran. If you're not going to get any treatment, they want you wiped out. The death list, the secret death list should prove that. Feinstein's declaring that you're all riddled with PTSD confirms that. The veterans are the #1 enemy. Okay, well, this is our base. And the loyal part of the military. We've got to get these guys. Because the military is going to be used against us. I mean, the United Nations is plotting to take over the country. Well, what is the United Nations? The United Nations is just a front for the U.S. government. With blue helmets instead of, regular-looking helmets. The only difference is they're wearing blue helmets. But it's the U.S. government. It's a front. NATO is a front for the U.S. government. They pretend it's some kind of international New World Order. No. The New World Order is the rule by the New World, which is America.
I have met the enemy, and he is us.
Exactly. Let's start thinking big. We can win this thing, because we got so many people, and they got so few people. They're just at the choke points. They run the government the way that they run Hollywood, the way they run the law. They got Jews at the key choke points. Okay, well, these guys got to be taken out. The choke points got to opened up. So it's a pretty simple proposition. It's just kind of radical. But so was the American Revolution. It was radical as hell. It was the first time it ever happened. People never thought it could happen. And it probably shouldn't have happened. If it weren't for France, we wouldn't have won that. The rebels wouldn't have won that war against England. But France did it with their fleet, their help. So let's start thinking big. We got to get allies. We can win this thing. We have to win it, or we're dead.
Well, again, they've written it in stone. They've written it in stone. They want to see the population of the world reduced to a manageable 500 million people. So they want to kill. That means they want to take out and kill 2/3 of the world's population, approximately. And actually, JB, I think you're right. We actually have their hold on us are these umbilical cords we call power lines. We developed the technology, Tesla developed the technology, not only that gave us electricity, but it was J.P. Morgan that owned the copper mines that mined all the copper to run all the lines, run all the wires. Tesla could have and did transmit the power, so we could actually, according to Tesla's research, whose patents were confiscated by the U.S. government, we could just power our light bulbs, power our computers right from the air around us. People are starting to discover that, hey, you can run electric cars. Now, they took out the electric cars because Rockefeller said competition's a sin, didn't want electric cars competing with his gas business, his petroleum business. Same thing with DuPont. They wanted to take hemp out because that might compete with the nylon that DuPont was producing from Rockefeller's oil. And my friend Paul Pantone, that invented the GEAT device, said you can get over 50 miles a gallon on a V8 engine. They put him in an insane asylum for a couple of years. Took us 2 years to get him out because he wouldn't give up his patents. He wouldn't give up. He wouldn't give up his GEAT technology. He wouldn't sign it over to him. You could run an electric car. You can run cars on water. I've got a whole film up about Stanley Meyer running his little dune buggy on water, and they killed him. They murdered him. The U.S. Navy has now found out that it's a fairly simple conversion to get their ships to run on the water they float on without enriching the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the oil business and the sheiks and whoever else is controlling the oil. I would believe that would be the International Monetary Fund. So the technology's there. We can run. They've got wheels that they've built that'll bolt right on to your Tesla electric car and generate enough power from the wheels turning to charge your batteries. So you'd never have to stop and plug it in anywhere. It could be totally self-sufficient. In Germany, every farmhouse you see has got solar panels on the roof and a windmill outside it. No electric lines running to them. We really got the ability to do this. Why are they doing it? I mean, I document this. I've got films on it. I've talked to people that have done it. I've interviewed people that have done it. Why aren't we doing it on a national basis? Oh, because it might be a threat to the economy. It might be a threat to the Rockefellers, to the Rothschilds, to the banksters that control us. But we ought to be encouraged by this. I guess we could be if they were telling us about it. If they didn't control the media and, of course, control the Alex Joneses out there, too. You still with me?
We got a guy in Oregon who's just going to jail now for touching rainwater. So obviously we got to change our ways. We got to be willing to fight at the suggestion of or this suppression of truth, the way you're describing. There's no peaceful way out of this. You just can't invent your way out, because the inventors, as you point out about Meyer, they get killed. So we got to be able to defend these guys with deadly force and defend ourselves, and be willing to do this at the drop of a hat. That's the way to survive this onslaught for now, and let these inventive people flourish. But it can't be done peacefully. As you pointed out, even since Tesla, they will destroy you if you do something that doesn't enrich them. So we got to be willing to fight and defend this concept. That's what this 4th of July message, I think, should be.
All right, and to end this up on, somebody just sent me this. Today, 7 Jewish Americans run the vast majority of U.S. television networks, the printed press, the Hollywood movie industry, the book publishing industry, and the recording industry. Most of these industries are bundled into huge media conglomerates run by the following 7 individuals: Gerald Levin, CEO, Director of AOL, Time Warner; Michael Eisner, Chairman, CEO of the Walt Disney Corporation; Edgar Bronfman, Chairman of Seagren Company Limited; Edgar Brofman Jr., President and CEO of Seagram Company, and head of Universal Studios. Summer Redstone, Chairman and CEO of Viacom. Dennis Damermeyer, Vice Chairman of General Electric. And Peter Chenin, President and CEO of News Corporation Limited. Now, that's the facts, boys and girls. What do you want to do about it? You want to condemn me for telling you who is pulling your chain, who's yanking your chain? All right, and also the idea for the American defense is what we should be doing. I've got links up on the site here. So, JB Campbell, thank you for your work. Thank you for what you've done. Thanks for being on my show. Hope you have a safe and wonderful holiday today. I'm going to enjoy it anyway. And folks, get this issue of the Fear American. The stories we've talked about are there. It's important. Just be able to hand it to your friends. Thanks, JB.
A topic today called September 11th. Should the truth be revealed or concealed?